Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Advisor. I am so excited today because I get to talk to Tom Cronin again. If you have not yet checked out our last episode, you need to because it's so awesome and so inspirational. Tom is a man who used to run around like crazy, and he was one of Australia's top bond and swap brokers. And then he swapped his life for a more simple one, let's just say. And now he's leading these amazing meditation retreats and he has one in Bali in September. And today we're going to talk about the world and how it's changing and positive leadership. Because right now, if you happen to tune into the news and stuff, you're seeing a lot of negativity. So we want to bring some hope back into the world. Before I introduce him, I just want to thank Spreaker and iHeartRadio for your sponsorship. And to our listeners and fans, please do not forget to like and subscribe before you leave today. It's really good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Good to be back again. It's always enjoyable having your conversations.
Yeah, they're important conversations. Before we hit record, we were talking about energy healing and high level leadership positions and just everybody's the same. We all have the same needs deep down, right?
Yeah, it's interesting, when we tend to put people on podiums and
Mhm.
pedestals, and that's because of a particular title that they've got, or it might be because a level of wealth that's in their bank account, and it might be because they have a particular career that is acting, playing out a role of someone else, and all of a sudden they're a celebrity because they play a different character that's seen by millions of people around the world in a movie. And so all of a sudden we have this complete shift in to who that person is, whether a president, a king, a celebrity, a singer, a sports star. And we tend to forget that, interestingly, regardless of their title, if we strip that away, regardless of their bank account, we strip that away, regardless of what film they've been in, we strip that away. There's really just a human being that is grappling with the same stuff that everyone else is grappling with: relationships, personal identity, finances, physical, mental health. It's really fascinating. And I've spent time with many very senior leaders, from celebrities to extremely wealthy businessmen, people of very high position in organizations. And it's interesting when they come to me, they have the same dilemmas and the same issues that I have with a 16-year-old school kid that I'm mentoring, or someone that's working in a simple job that is grappling with day-to-day challenges. And it's really fascinating that the universe doesn't discriminate when it comes to our own personal growth and spiritual identity.
Totally. Oh my God. I love it. I could just picture a celebrity come up to you being like, Tom, my husband will not take out the garbage. What do I do? There's like everyone's just equal. And from a really young age, I've always had this like innate knowing of that. And I remember going into this leadership meeting and the CEO of the company was there and he looked super stressed. And I walked up to him, I'm like, are you doing okay? And he was taken aback by that. And he was like, oh my God, thank you for asking. Because I feel like if as a leader or someone of high status, like there's this assumption that they have their shit together, like that they know something we don't, or they're supposed to be strong, or they're supposed to hold everybody up. And gosh, that's a really difficult place to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's actually not only a difficult place to be, it's actually more difficult. A lot of people think of them as
Mhm.
privileged or exclusive or better and better off than most of us. But, I had one gentleman who he contacted me out of the blue. His friend recommended he contacted me. And this guy had sold his business to a large organization in Australia for $350 million. And this gentleman, with his $350 million, he literally couldn't spend it in his lifetime. He had a wonderful wife, two kids, and he went and bought a palace on the Amalfi Coast in Italy. Now, this is one of the ultimate dreams. You have these sort of visions of, when I get X, Y, Z, then my life is going to be amazing. So he had this $50 million palace on the edge of the Mediterranean Sea in Italy. He had butlers, maids, and chefs and servants. He had a garage full of the most amazing cars, his wonderful wife, wonderful kids. Literally, you could not find another box to tick that would say, this is what you should get in life to be happy. You know, the partner, the children,
Yeah.
healthy, The money, there's this, if you looked at all the things that we're trying to get in life to be a barometer for how happy we're going to be, he literally had everything. And he contacted me and I said, nice to meet you. You know, what's going on? Why have you reached out? He goes, I've got XYZ, all the things that I just listed, but I've never been more depressed, angry, and anxious than I've ever been today. And I just don't understand it. Like, what's happening to me? And interestingly, we're all striving to get to some degree of affluence or particular destination in life, thinking that we're going to find happiness in that place. And the problem is, when we get all those things, the reason why he was depressed, anxious, and angry, because he was told a lie, that he was told that you are going to find fulfillment when you get there, but you won't. You never will. You just simply can't. It's not going to come from a label. It's not going to come from a title. It's not going to come from a bank account. It's not going to come from a partner. We just simply can't find the fulfillment we're looking for in the field of relativity. And I said to him, you've done well in the outside world, but now it's time to go inward. And that's when he started to learn to meditate. He came on my Bali retreat, and yeah, his life turned around, and he started to realize that it wasn't about what he accumulated externally, it was about what he found internally. And that was a really big shift for him.
I love that because I literally just wrote about this. So many people think I'm going to go on a vacation. I'm going to run away from my life and everything's going to get better. When I get back, I'll feel better. But it's in here. You have to like sit and be silent and go within and figure out who you are and be able to sit in the silence and really love who you are and play and have fun and not worry about that other stuff, the noise. And I'm just picturing this man with his palace and castle and wife and kids and just being miserable. That's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, it's people think it's the dream life, but it's actually creates so much turmoil. All you have to do is look at how disenchanted, disconnected, polarized, extremely rich people are. So many of them, and this is not to say that you can't be happy and be wealthy. That's definitely not the case. But if we take, let's just say, Buddhist monks for the last 3,000 years, they've specifically tried to shortcut the process by shaving their head. Our hair, one of the things that we define ourselves as beautiful.
Mm.
They take off their clothes and put on a robe that doesn't distinguish them different or better than anyone else, which is a complete antithesis of what most of us are doing with our clothes.
Yeah.
Um, they take off their shoes, another form of identity. If you think about, most of us have got a wardrobe of shoes because it makes us feel good. And then they remove any other forms of distraction, partners, children, money, and they just say, I'm not going to let that world be a vortex or a distraction from what I'm actually here to do in this world. And I'm going to only look inward, and I'm going to spend day after day meditating, year after year meditating. And I'm going to cultivate the deepest level of connection to source, to being, to my true nature, and find the ultimate source of bliss and fulfillment. Now, I'm not suggesting that anyone go and suddenly run away from their families and join a monastery. What I'm saying is that we do need to compartmentalize and integrate the process of an inward journey in our day so that we can actually have both. We either a householder or an unseen. In the Vedic tradition, we recognize that there are two categories or two types of people in the world. There are those that are born into an unseen existence, so they're naturally just born, like the Dalai Lama, where it's a soul journey that they know deep in their soul. Swami Brahmananda Saraswati at the age of 8 said, I'm going to go and seek enlightenment and I'm going to take a vows of renunciation. So these people know in their body deeply that this is the path and the journey for them in this incarnation. The rest of the world are born as householders, and there's nothing you can do about it. And this is the problem with a lot of religious people, is that unfortunately their bodies are born for the householder lifestyle, but unfortunately they're going down, some of them, the pathway of renunciation, which is priests and nuns, and that causes some problems because physically they're probably not born for an renunciant body. You either are or you aren't. And there's just simply no desire if you're in that renunciant body. It doesn't come into play for them. But if you're born a householder, then live the householder lifestyle, but don't ignore the point of why we're here. And it's not accumulating things. And that things is families, partners, and possessions. But um, we're here to enjoy the fruits of those things, but also make sure that the whole point of our journey is the inward journey to discover the nature of true self. And that's when we can live a really beautiful life by having those two worlds merge as one.
Wow, what is going within like for you? I know for me, I get these crazy like clarity, like my version of a download and like inspiration and just like it's like play. It's almost like fun. It's like I feel like I'm a child, just like basking in it. What is it like for you?
It's very structured for me. It's a process, what we call transcending in meditation. So I use Vedic
Hmm.
meditation as a pathway to move my mind's attention inward, away from duality. So duality is where there's subject and object phenomenon. So the subject being the ego, which is your thoughts and feelings, and the external world, the object, which is future, past, or present, and the dynamic exchange between subject and object. So that's the sensation that happens when this ego's attention, the subject, goes to the object, let's say your electricity bill, or your soccer team winning a game, or your child that just fell over in the park. So the dynamic interaction between your attention, the ego, and where the attention's going to, and the feeling level that happens between those two things. But what happens when I meditate is that using my mantra, it pulls the mind's attention away from that dualistic world, away from subject object phenomenon, into a non dual world of there just being what we call presence or conscious awareness inside, and that ultimately is a place of deep stillness, deep quiet. And we call this transcendence or samadhi. And that's a beautiful place where we get out of the thinking mind and out of the feeling body, and we get into the unbounded bliss and eternality of presence or being.
Yeah, so where all your thoughts just flow and you let them come and you watch them go. Takes practice, hey?
It does take practice, but at the same time, it depends on the meditation. So that's what I would consider more mindfulness, where we're watching the thoughts. What we're talking about here is transcending thoughts. So there's a realm of consciousness that's beyond thinking, and Deepak Chopra talks about getting behind the thoughts. So it's almost like pulling back the curtain, the thoughts being the curtain, and then when you pull back the thoughts or transcend the thoughts, go beyond where the fluctuations of the mind are, we get into a place of just simply unbounded awareness. And a woman I was teaching this week, she went into that space in her second meditation, and she said, it just felt like I was like it I was outside my body, inside. It was everything. I was just, but there was nothing, everything and nothing. And she said it's hard to explain because it felt like I was just this big spaciousness. And I said, yeah, you're starting to realize that you're actually a unified field, and you perceive as the thinking mind, feeling body, and physical form, physical, mental, and emotional identity, that you're that. But in actual fact, you're the field that is expressing through that. And so this is a really integral part of what it is to learn to be human, is to learn that you're not thoughts, feelings, and physicality, physical, mental, and emotional. You have thoughts, you have feelings, and you have a physicality, but ultimately you're spiritual. And you might have seen the memes, I'm a spiritual being having a physical experience, which is true. That's very much the true. You're the eternality of the divine expressing temporarily as a form. And we get lost in the identity of us being the form, which of course is the source of all of our suffering. But when we're able to transcend that in meditation and realize, gosh, no, it's experiential. I am the divine, and I'm the field of the divine. You can change that word for source or God, but I'm coming back out of that experience of transcendence of my individualized self and starting to identify again as my thoughts, feelings, and physicality. So what we want to do is eventually, over time, infuse those two experiences of, oh, okay, so I am the divine all the time, and I'm experiencing that all the time. I'm experiencing that all the time whilst I'm expressing that as Tom, thoughts, feelings, and physicality.
Yes, you are not your mind. Like I tell myself that all the time. Not all the time, but I tell myself that when I do go down those paths of anxiety or fear steps in, and I'm like, you are not your mind. Like this is not you. So once you learn that and keep practicing that, it's empowering.
Yeah, the wonderful thing we're getting to, and I know this can sound so, I don't want a lot of people to bombard my Instagram saying I'm talking about spiritual bypassing now. And so I definitely identify a lot of the time as Tom, the thoughts, feelings, and physicality. And I get lost in that illusion all the time, um, most of the time. And there are windows of time where I'm like, wow, okay, wow, I truly get it. I truly see, not I, but there's a seeing, a witnessing, there's a knowing of the unbounded field being expressed temporarily, momentarily, in the blink of an eye, as Tom. And there's this real deep sense of faith and trust and knowingness that comes through that experience. And then there's a lot of illusion and forgetting, and we call it Maya, the illusion of me being thoughts, feelings, and Tom, the identity. So what we're not looking to do is completely bypass the fact that you have a body and the thoughts and the feeling. We really want to live in that and treat that with the ultimate respect. Purify the mind, be really present and aware of the sensations that move through the body and sit with those and honor those with integrity and really respect and appreciate the physical form. It is a limiting faculty, it's a limiting facility, but we do need to give it the ultimate option and the ultimate possibility of being full potential. So putting the right amount of liquids in it, fluids, clean, purified water, nourishing it with all the right vitamins and minerals and nutrients, and treating it with respect, stretching, exercising, all those sorts of things. I see so many people with such disconnection and disregard for this incredible physical apparatus that we've been gifted to be here on this little planet. And it's like such a blessing to be given one of these vehicles. It's like, wow, treat it with so much respect. But a lot of people just, trash it.
That is probably one of my biggest like people watching, and I'm like, how do they not get it? I have that moment all the time where I'm like, do they know what they're putting in their bodies and why don't they care? Or but then some people aren't affected by it, or maybe they think they're not, or they just can't feel it. They don't have that level of awareness. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that every single day. And I'm like, I don't know why they're doing that to themselves.
Yeah. I used to have a neighbor, and he had this beautiful fancy red Ferrari. And he was like I'm sure it was a midlife crisis he was going through. He was like a 60-year-old guy. He was a doctor. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, he was really unhealthy. As far as if you looked at him physically, he was extremely overweight. He always looked very pasty, someone that sat at a desk all day long, and I never
Mm.
saw him exercising. He was very jowly, sort of big, sort of jowly around under his chin. Um, and yeah, there was no muscle definition, there was no tone, and he just be out in his singlet and shorts, and he was always polishing his car. Like I never saw someone give their car as much attention as this person.
Right.
He loved his car so much, and I was thinking, gosh, there's two vehicles in his driveway. One is a red Ferrari, and the other one is his body, and that body is his vehicle that moves him from A to B on this particular planet. And I was thinking, if only he gave the other vehicle the same level of attention, because the red Ferrari is
Wow.
just simply moving him from A to B, and he's giving it so much love and attention, and there's so much, appreciation for that vehicle. It's like, wow, if only he appreciated the other vehicle, which is an even better piece of equipment. It's phenomenal how good that piece of equipment is, but there was just a real disregard for it.
Wow. That is symbolism at its finest right there. Wow.
Totally right.
Crazy. So I guess I've been talking to more and more people, and people such as yourself who said that the world is shifting. We're moving to more of a conscious world. Why do you think that is? And I don't know, where does Tom predict we're going? Like even by the end of this year, because I'm hearing a lot of different things.
Yeah, it's really interesting. A lot of people, I have conversations with people, think the world is getting worse. It might look like it's getting worse, and sometimes things look like they're getting worse, even though in actual fact it has to get worse before it gets better. I know for me in my late 20s, I had one of the darkest times in my life, but that was a prelude to one of the biggest leaps of growth in my life as well. So the analogy I like to use is a renovation, and I've done four of these where we've taken an old home that has kind of passed its use by date, and it really is time for a renewal. And we will go in there and we will start to renovate. Now, in the middle of that renovation, the bathroom will be ripped out, the kitchen's all ripped out, the curtains and carpets are all ripped out. And the house, if you took that as a snapshot right smack bang in the middle of the renovation, you'd go, what have you done to this house? You've completely ruined it. Like, this is unlivable. It's worse than what it was, which is true. It's a lot less livable than what it used to be. And if you were to take it from that snapshot and not future forecast what it's going to become, I could show you the 3D renders on a computer screen with the architect. This is going to be phenomenal. You wait to see. But if you weren't able to see what it's going to become, which is where most people are at right now, they're looking at the middle of the renovation and they're not future forecasting or being able to see the 3D render of their life or the planet in the future. And so there's a natural expectation that where it is right now, or where I was in my late 20s in that middle of that crisis, was diabolically bad. But with the knowingness now in hindsight and the ability to future forecast, we would say, oh my goodness, this is amazing. What he's going through this is incredible. This is so exciting. This is the major catalyst for the biggest shift you could possibly see. And it's kind of like the hero's journey that we see in Joseph Campbell's arc of stories. And I think this is where the world's at. It's, for me, there's only evolution. To assume that evolution can be superseded by humans' intentions and desires is madness. It's like, you think these little
Totally.
humans on this tiny little dust ball floating around a tiny little spark in this tiny little corner of the universe is more powerful than a whole universal
Yeah.
evolutionary intelligence. It's crazy to assume that. So what we need to start doing is probing a little bit deeper than watching mainstream media and
Yeah.
seeing, just because all it's going to report is cataclysmic events. And so we can assume if there's something happening in Gaza or Ukraine or Sudan or somewhere, that the world is getting worse. But in actual fact, we are seeing incredible levels of growth in the degrees of consciousness. We do have some challenges at the moment, which is a lot of distraction with our phones and social media. But what I'm seeing, and I'm working with some very senior high level leaders, and this is the first time I've seen people at such a high level of authority in the world starting to explore their own personal transformations, to explore clearing out deep wounds and traumas. And I think that's a really exciting proposition for the planet, when some of the most powerful people on the planet are no longer influenced by their deep wounds and deep traumas, and childhood and generational codes. Then I see a lot of hope for humanity going forward.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Because everyone looks up to them. And so if they're clear-minded in that way, then they can affect so many people.
Well, we covered this in our film, The Portal, which is a shameless plug, and people can watch it on our website, entertheportal.com, for free. But we talk about that the state of consciousness you're in is a determining factor for what you create and do. And, there's a saying Mikey Siegel used, we create what we are. And so if you're a powerful leader that is making major political decisions or major organizational decisions, if you're head of Google or Facebook or Apple or a major bank or major pharmaceutical, and you become extremely conscious, enlightened, and interconnected in the unified field, realizing that everything that you say and do is going to have some ripple effect on affecting millions, if not billions of people, then you're going to be very, very specific about the decisions you make with your business or with your policies, knowing that you want to have the best impact for the whole, not for your own individual personal gain, not for your share price, not for your shareholders, but every single touch point of that organization needs to some way make the world a better place. And that's a totally different way of running a business. But that type of business can only come from someone being in a state of unity consciousness. So my motivation is, how do we get as many people into unity consciousness so that we can have
Mhm.
businesses and politicians making better decisions?
Yeah. And I see that like low level when someone who's super conscious or awake walks in a room, how they can basically control the energy in that room. So we've all seen that and experienced that from a person just by their presence. And imagine that on a high level like that. It could honestly make a really, really, really big difference in the world.
Yeah, we call this event horizon, which is a sphere of influence. And what we know about this sphere of influence is that there's a vibrational resonance that goes beyond physical mass. And so we can quantify this by looking at the sun, which is a ball of fire millions and millions of miles away, that will
Hmm.
actually burn your skin if you're out in the sun for 2 hours without sun cream. So it's like putting a sausage under a grill. So the energetic resonance of that ball of fire will travel so far with its light, its heat, and its gravitational pull. So even Pluto will be caught in the energetic vortex of that ball of fire. And if we take planet Earth, we have the physical mass of planet Earth, but then we've got the moon in its energetic field of gravitational pull. We have the moon, which is a ball of dust just floating around planet Earth, and its resonance or unseen energetic influence will move billions of tons of water every day on our planet. So we know that there's the capacity for something physical to affect something in a different location without physically touching it, because we can see that just in our solar system. And so we know then that when, let's just say, cranky sister or grumpy brother walks into the family dinner party, the whole dinner party changes, right? And
Totally.
so this is the impact that someone can have, whether they're positive or negative. So we have also this wonderful capacity for extremely enlightened and conscious leaders to walk into an auditorium or into an arena, into a retreat, and it have an incredible uplifting effect on the people in that vicinity that can really change those people's lives. Hugging Amma is a classic example where people can look her up, just go hugging and then AMMA, and she will have people line up for 14 hours, 24 hours just to come into her physical embrace. And in that physical embrace where it's called darshan. Darshan is an energetic influence on someone when they come close into the vortex of that person. So people will queue up for literally a day to
Wow.
get a hug from hugging Amma, and they get this activation. I guess it was kind of like, if you wanted to share, the person you've been working with recently, that can have this incredible potency and influence on us.
Yeah, it's real. And there's those people who, they don't believe things like this because they can't see it. It's energy is real. Every day, the sun and the moon, everything is shifting and it changes people. It changes, as you said, the energetics, the moon, like it's all so powerful. And it's just something that's not quite understood well, I guess. But I feel like people are open to it now more than ever, which is so
Yeah.
exciting.
Just ask someone if they're not into it. Do you use Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
say, how does that
totally.
work?
Yeah. How does that work? Yeah. Can you see it? They'll be like, well, there's a tower right there. Yeah, but what about the
What's
energy?
between the tower and the phone? Yeah, how does that information get from the tower
Yes.
to the phone? Yeah, it's unseen flow of intelligence. Yeah. I mean,
Unseen.
we, yeah, we're just starting to work this out. It's quite interesting.
It is. Gosh. Tell us about your upcoming retreat. Tell us about your website. Tell us all the things, all the good stuff.
Sure. So I like to take people away from their current environments. Obviously, I teach people to meditate while they're in their current environment. So I'm running a course this week. So I run courses in person where they can come to my centers around Australia. And I teach them in an in-person course, but I also teach them on Zoom. So this is the first time really this has been done. It's not part of the tradition traditionally, where we would teach people through these remote locations using Zoom, which is, I find, a fascinating and phenomenal um, mechanism for us to be able to access more people and reach people around the world. So I now teach people courses of meditation on Zoom, but it's still in their environment. It's still in home. They get off the course, they learn how to meditate, and they integrate that into their life. But then they have to go and do the shopping and pick up the kids and pay the electricity bill. So twice a year, I like to take people out of their environment. It was going to be 3 times a year. I was going to be in the USA for a retreat this year, but things have become really difficult getting into the USA at the moment. So trying to get our visa has been pushed back because of the US visa regulations. So we're trying to
Uh,
maybe do one in the new year. Once I get the visa, I want to do it properly with follow all the protocols. But we've got one coming up in Bali. And the beautiful thing about this is that it works on so many levels, this retreat. The first thing is we scour the world for locations that have a very high resonance. And there are a number of different locations that we know there's a vortex or an energetic point on the planet that that location has a better energy than other locations. So some of these places that we've identified to be relevant places, and it's not an accident that a lot of spiritual people congregate or high vibrational people congregate in these locations. But Pai in Maui, Hawaii, is definitely a high vibrational location. Sedona looks like a very high vibrational location. We've got Costa Rica, and I believe somewhere in some places in Mexico, but I found Mexico to be quite, um, I'll move on from that. But Byron Bay in Australia, Bali is very high vibrational. So we've got a location in Bali that I did a lot of research on as far as the energies of that location, and it's very transformational. So we have a retreat in Bali up in the mountains, and it's a really deep immersion with lots of meditation and breath work and yoga and amazing workshops and amazing spa center where you can get incredible massages in a beautiful pool. So it's about taking people away from their world, putting them in an environment that is already doing a lot of work on them. So we're going to do a lot
Yeah.
of work through the retreat program, but the venue itself, the food itself, the talks itself, and even the community. When you're with 20 to 30 people in a communal experience that are all for the entire week talking high vibrational things, being in lots of love and bliss and joy, then we all get swept along in that current collectively of moving into higher frequency. And the power of that is firstly to realize the potential of what life feels like when we're in a high frequency, but also by getting us into a high frequency, a really interesting phenomenon happens. Low frequencies can't exist in a high frequency environment. And low frequencies are guilt, shame, sadness, fear, regret, anger. And so, what interestingly happens, my primary focus with the retreat is to get people into a high frequency. And then we watch the purging of the low frequencies exiting out of the body. It's like, whoa, I can't live in this. This is too unbearable. And that's why the microcosm of your body purging low frequencies. So, you'll have some tears, you'll have some frustration coming out as that expends and burns itself off out of the body. It's almost like running out of there. We tend to find that can happen also in our lives as well. We see the macrocosm of lots of low frequency stuff just exiting out of your life and high frequency stuff coming into your life when we start changing our vibrational states. So a lot of that is what's going to happen on the retreat. It's a very powerful process.
How do you get people to leave?
Yeah, well, this is the interesting thing. We do give them a very diligent going home strategy
Mm.
to embrace the opportunity of interacting and engaging back into a world, because a lot of people are like, I'm not going home. I don't want to go anywhere. I want to stay here, right? This is my little bubble. But that's not how we're relevant. And this is a really
True.
good point that you asked, because if you think of a beacon of light or a lamppost is most effective on a dark corner.
Mhm.
There's no point a bunch of lampposts hanging out in daytime. His 16 lampposts in the middle of the day, or going, well, isn't this great? It's beautiful and bright here. It's like, yeah, but you're not being relevant at all. So what if we place you guys in the nighttime, far enough apart so that the radiance and luminosity of your lamppost will only go so far, but it's far enough for the next lamppost to pick up the slack. And you'll find that lampposts are spaced just far enough apart so that the edges of their radiance and luminosity just touches each other. Okay. And that's what we need in the world. We need lots of lampposts interspersed in law firms, in banks, in pharmaceutical companies, in schools, so that we've got this luminosity starting to spread all through the world. And that's ultimately what I'm teaching and training them for, is to not just discover your luminosity, but to discover how to be relevant with your luminosity. And yesterday I did a keynote presentation at Australia's largest petroleum company.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
these aren't places for us to ignore because they might be bad for our environment. These are places for us to relish and walk into and see what influence we can have in making them a better place.
Where can people read about your retreat and find out more about what you do?
Best places to go is to just tomcronin.com, and they can find my retreats, my meditation, and my coaching there.
Amazing. It was so fun chatting with you. I can't believe how fast the time went by.
Yeah, it's like we're in a time warp whenever we get together, you and I, and we just get into a bubble and have deep conversation, which is great. And thanks everyone for listening in and joining this, and hopefully they've found some value in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I literally was in Bali when you were talking about it, and I was literally like, he wouldn't be able to get me to go, but you convinced me I would go. I would go. Yeah, thanks so much. So good to see you. I look forward to the next conversation.
Yeah, likewise myself. Have a great day.
You too. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in. Please do not forget to like and subscribe. You just heard from Tom Cronin. Go check out his website. Isn't he amazing? I just absolutely adore this man. Until next time, my name is Lisa Urbanski with The Advisor. Bye, everyone. Go meditate. TM. Look it up.